Little introduction to the newest project I've acquired. This is a 1963 Fordson Dexta, 32 horsepower, 3-cylinder engine, Perkins engine, diesel tractor. It runs and starts and has had a partial restoration around 10 years ago by the previous owner, but it's going to need a bit of fettling. The wiring and the fuel pipes and hoses all could do with being refreshed, but on the whole it's in pretty good order. I'm pleased with how it looks at the moment. We've given it a pressure wash since getting it home, but there's going to be a few little jobs to do for sure. As you can see there, we've got the carb with this machine. That'll need a lot more work, but pleased to have it to be able to work on. Also managed to pick up a topper for this machine from the same bloke, so that's going to make the machine very useful straight away. Overall the tin works in really good condition. Engine seems to run comfortably and healthy when it's fired up. Right, certainly cutting grass. So we've got the first little repair on the Fordson Dexta. As you can see here, the terminal on the end of the starter cable is pretty corroded and burnt out, so I'm going to replace this with a new end, and hopefully that should remedy the starting issues I'm having at the moment. Just on removing this wiring harness now, and as you can see, all of these terminals and connections were well past the best. Not actually sure how it was still making a connection to start, but it was managing. So I'm really pleased to be replacing this full wiring harness and slowly but surely accumulate all the parts to do the whole wiring system, all the switches, everything. And the battery leads, currently the battery leads are out of stock on the website I've been getting parts from, so I'll be making up my own set. Currently I've just put a new terminal on the end of the cable for now, but as you can see the cable is past its best, so I'll be replacing that as well. Nice negative connection there. That's some real craftsmanship. Certainly be changing that, that's for sure. Getting a good look around the steering box, and the thermostat and stop cables seem to be in poor condition as well, so they'll be getting changed out. More brilliant wiring. So I'm just trying to replace the fan belt here, and as you can see the guard tray on the bottom there is absolutely caked full of gunk, probably old belt debris and muck. So I'm just doing my best to try and remove as much of that as I can before I install the new belt. Now I just have to get that pulled out and get the belt installed. So as you can see there, I've managed to blast out quite a lot of crap from the little housing at the bottom here, the front of the tractor. Now got the new belt fitted, nice and taut, but the problem that I can see is the belt has been rubbing on that pipe there, so I'll have to try and reroute the pipe when I replace the pipe. So I've just been giving the machine a good clean down, sprayed it with some chemicals earlier, some cleaning chemicals, and then I've now rinsed it off. As you can see, the battery tray is not looking so good, but give it a lick of paint, should be alright. The engine itself is looking in half decent condition. You can see there's definitely a leak or a failed gasket around the manifold, or perhaps this little plate here, but I'm not too concerned about that. I'll settle that once the machine's running again. Just a shot of the new wiring harness from this side coming in through that little gap there. I've got new fuel filter and oil filter to change as well. Just giving a good look at how it is at the moment before I get right into it. As you can see, I'm just in the process of removing this horrendous earth strap. It's worked, but only in a pinch, and I'd like to be a bit more a bit better of a connection than that. So as you can see, the insulation's all cracked anyway, so this wire is well past its best. Change that out to a new cable and new terminals for the battery. So when I've been removing this housing here to fit the new wiring harness, I had to remove the RPM cable and the kill cable. The kill cable was pretty worse for wear and wouldn't have really worked for much longer, I don't think. And the temperature gauge there was smashed, so I've removed that as well. Looking a bit bare now, but swap these parts out once I get them in the post and should be coming back together soon. Gonna put a new ignition on it, as the original ignition barrel was missing the light switch. It's been snapped off in the past, so I'll be replacing that as well. So I'm just on replacing this earth feed cable. As you can see, just scored up a little bit of the paint where the bolt's going to land, and got the terminal on the bolt ready to tighten down. This is going to give it a much more substantial connection than the original setup had. So I've just been starting to have a look at this exhaust manifold, as it looks like the gaskets are leaking on either side. And the first bolt that I tried, the first nut was just finger tight. So no wonder the gaskets are leaking. Could possibly get away with just nipping these up, but I'll remove the manifold and replace the gaskets anyway. Get the block cleaned up with the manifold off, and then I can clean the manifold and paint it. Well, I've just been changing out the fuel filter on the Fordson Dexta, and as you can see, it was long overdue. Yet again, amazed how this even ran the way this is. Some serious sludge and gunk build up in this filter. So really pleased to get that changed out. I suspect I'll probably change this again well before the recommended time, just to try and catch as much of the residual gunk that's in the system. Got the new filter installed now, new O-ring on the top as well, and all seems to be sealed up now, although I'm not convinced that this lift pump is actually working properly, or that the shut-off valve works 100%, as winding it fully out or fully in doesn't seem to stop the fuel flow when I had the filter removed, so I was working with a slight dribble of fuel throughout the whole process. I'm not sure if that's possibly a diaphragm in here that's split, so the pump doesn't actually stop the fuel, it just constantly flows, or if there's something potentially not how it should be with this stopcock here on the primer. So after just letting this fuel drain through the pipework as the tractor's leaning forwards, it has gravity fed itself, because the lift pump does seem to just to say affect it, but not very much. So I think the lift pump could do with being rebuilt, but I'm happy that that fuel filter is now full. So I'll just put the bleed screw back in, nip that up, dry everything off and check there's no more drips anywhere. So just getting set up to do the first oil change on the Dexta. Got the pan in place, ready to crack the drain plug off. So got you set up there. Hopefully you should be able to see when I drain this oil. Going off the fuel filter, I'm not expecting this oil to be in the cleanest condition or the filter to be any better, because I don't think it's had a service in the time it's been there. Try not to drop this drain plug into the pan, as we might have to stop it halfway through once we start the drain. Here we go. So that's nearly finished draining.
Well, it's leaning the right way anyhow.
Oh, isn't it just?
Not a mega tilt thing. Oh, it's sitting on a bit of a lean.
No, it's helping it drain. But that's nearly it there, it slowed right down there, so.
You took the oil filter off?
Not yet, no. No, I didn't want to take it off. I thought I'd drain the oil first, then take the oil filter off.
You need right on the right. Are you sure that type of oil they use like 1540?
It's what they sell on the website for this, where I've been buying all parts. So it's not the same.
It seems quite thin like this.
Well, it possibly needs to be. Exactly. See, boys. Hi, boys. Well, I'm just going to put that plug back in, I think. Seems to be slowing right down now, that dribble.
No, I wouldn't. I would just leave it out.
Do you think?
And pour a bit of fresh oil through and let it drain out.
Right, well, I'm going to do the filter, so
I'll take the filter off.
I should be able to just leave that dribbling and then do the filter at the same time.
I don't need a chain for that now.
It's a spanner. But you can get an adapter kit where you put a screw on one, but I think it's actually better with a spanner.
Oh.
If you've got the spanners, you know what I mean.
I always just pour a bit of fresh through and let it drain through.
Quite right.
Yeah, it's got a metal cover on.
But not too bad. Just get that changed. There's the replacement filter. Just wetting down the seal with some clean oil here, just before I install it.
You know, I couldn't pay when you can. Never mind, I'm having in the day, treaty.
Just going to start a flush with some fresh oil here. Get some of the residual crud flushed through before I put the actual new oil into the machine.
Yeah. Yes.
Flush too much through.
That's good. Doesn't get any sludge on the bottom.
I mean, no, it's flowing through nearly clear there. I mean,
if there was any sludge on the bottom, sort it out.
Well, it's had a chance to settle and then flush again. So,
well, you're gonna have to remember is when you started, fill the oil.
Oh, I know it's going to want more oil than it looks like it needs. But I'm expecting to just put
You're gonna have to
a little below the line in because it's leaning forward before it gets started. And then I'll have to just top the level up again once it's been ran for 5 minutes or so.
Well, you haven't got a block under this, have you?
I have, it's over here.
Alright.
It's fine, it's not moving anywhere. It's still glugging little bits of sludge out, like. But it's a lot cleaner than it has been. But that tub was clean before I drained that out. So
spray a little bit of.
it's fine. No, I'm happy with it like that.
It'll
It's
be
fine.
fine.
Oh, I am happy with how that's looking there.
It'll drop
The top and bottom of it is, this is just for now. It needs to be ran for a bit and then it's going to want the same done again.
Well,
Because it's never had anything done the time it's been there. The bloke's had it, what, 36 years he said or something? Well, that's nipped up. Now just need to fill it up until the bloody oil comes to the dipstick. Right then, so I'm just getting a look at replacing this rubber boot on the starter motor, as it's a common fault that the boot will split, but in this case it looks like it may have actually been nibbled away by mice. So I'm gonna remove the split pin from the starter linkage, and then I should be able to loosen these 4 screws and remove the boot itself and swap it out for the new one. Just get this one pin pulled out. So that's the starter linkage removed there. Just going to have to go and get a longer screwdriver to get those back 2 out. So should be able to just reach down through that gap and get the back 2. So with the boot now removed, you want to peel the boot through the center of this metal hold down plate that sits like that to sandwich the rubber seal against the switch mounting bracket. Compare those two boots, they look pretty much identical, as close as you're going to get. Just punch these little holes through in the corner of the rubber, as the mould hasn't fully formed the hole. So they're now pierced through the centres and the bolt will go through. So before I assemble this, I think I'm just going to clean up these parts a little bit, and I'll come back to you once I've cleaned them up. So I've just been cleaning up this hold down bracket here with a little bit of Scotch-Brite, and I'm pretty pleased with how that's looking now. Just going to scrape off the last little bit of gunk off this surface here and make sure not to drop any into the hole there, into the starter mechanism. It's not too thick, so it's coming off quite easy. So, happy enough with how that's looking there. So, I believe that was actually like that, which doesn't seem right. You'd think there would be a seal on there, but there isn't. So with this mounting bracket now on the rubber boot, I'll just need to put a little slit in the boot and then I can install it onto the starter. So I've just put a bit of silicone gasket on below this mounting bracket here, just to try and help prevent any water ingress over time, as the rubber boot actually seats onto this top face here, so it's not going to seal this lower face. So I'm pleased to get a little bit of sealant on there, with two little slits made in the top of it there to go over the starter arm. So that's now on. So with the boot installed now, I've just put that linkage pin back in place, and I'm just going to put a new split pin in the end of it to keep the pin from dropping out. So I'm just starting to have a look at replacing the coolant hoses. As you can see, they are starting to perish. They aren't leaking yet, but I suspect they will in the very near future. So I'm going to replace the hoses and the Jubilee bands, and obviously at the same time I'll be dropping the coolant and refilling the whole system. See those pipes in there? aren't as bad, but they are going to be replaced regardless. This one here is probably the worst. Very perished. I'm actually surprised that isn't leaking yet, to be honest. But we'll get them changed out, and it's another step closer to getting this Dexta back on the road. So I'm just going to have a go at opening up this drain tap, see if it actually works or not. Well, that's promising, it is moving. Well, after pulling this first hose off here, it certainly looks like this water pump is in a slightly worse state than it should be. So I suspect I'll be replacing this as well. Yet another item to add to the list. I can't imagine that's going to be flowing as freely as it should be. Well, I'll get the rest of these hoses off, and then I'll have a look at how I can get that water pump off. So as you can see, I've removed the steering wheel here, and my plan is, because I'm not convinced that the fuel lift pump is still working, I'm also not 100% convinced that this petcock / primer button mechanism is fully shutting off, because I can't seem to stop the fuel. So it also seems to be missing the little handle that's for the fuel shut off tap. So you need a pair of pliers to try and move that, but so far at any point in that screw travel there, it doesn't shut off the fuel flow. So I'm going to drain the tank, and then to do so I'll remove this outer pipe here, so it's bypassing the filter and everything. So I'll drain everything out the tank and then remove the return line here and the 4 bolts that hold the tank in place, and then I'll be able to remove the tank off the tractor, get a good look inside of it, and possibly give it a swill out, and if necessary could line the inside if it's looking worse, but we'll see. Just going off what was in the fuel filter, I'm expecting there to be quite a bit of gunk in the tank, so it'll do it the world of good to get this off and cleaned out before I start running any fuel through the new filter. So I've now got that main fuel feed pipe there, just gently bent it out past the steering rod there, and I've got a couple of jerry cans just ready to go, slowly draining the fuel out. It doesn't look too bad what's coming out, but no doubt there will be sediment in there, so I'm going to have the tank off while the rest of the fuel's draining out. I'm going to have a look at taking the mounting bolts out from the bottom of the tank. So after receiving a delivery of a few parts today, I'm going to be looking at replacing the fuel pickup pump. So I'm just going to get a look at replacing this fuel lift pump. As you can see, I've had the feed from the tank off and drained the tank, because when I changed the fuel filter initially, the fuel flow wouldn't stop even when I shut the petcock fully on the fuel tank. So I'm going to be tearing that to bits and seeing if I can repair the seal in the fuel tank. So while I'm on, I'm going to do the injector diaphragm here, as well as the fuel lift pump. So that's covering pretty much all the fuel system, making sure everything that could perish has been replaced, and should be hopefully a lot more reliable than it was. So I'm just about to install the new fuel lift pump from Agriline, part number 45407. So I've now got the new fuel lift pump installed, as you can see. Just need to do the injector pump diaphragm before I put the pipework back in place. So I have just removed the governor diaphragm here. Now I couldn't get the camera in to get a shot of me actually doing this, but as you can see on the shaft there is a small hole that has a retaining pin through it. Now the only way I could get to that pin to remove it was using a very fine tipped hooked pick, and I managed to get into the top ring of the split pin and pull it out using this hook, because it's a very tight space to get into. Now as you can see in this fuel pump, in this governor diaphragm body here, we'll have to clean this out a bit as there's quite a bit of residue sitting in the bottom there. So I'll give this a good wipe out and then install the new diaphragm. So I've just managed to get the replacement split pin in place there, holding this new injector pump governor diaphragm onto the shaft that moves the diaphragm back and forth. As you can see, the space I was working with was very narrow, so the only tool I was able to use was this narrow pointed pick to guide the pin into place, and I used a very narrow magnet on a stick to get the washer onto the shaft as well. Really pleased with how this is looking. Just need to reassemble the outer casing with the spring, and that's another piece of the fuel system sorted. So that's the governor diaphragm housing now reinstalled with the vacuum feed pipe installed as well. And that's going to be it for this video, as it's getting quite long. So catch us in the next one, where I'll be tackling removing the fuel tank and getting that swilled out before I get the whole system filled up again. Thanks for watching, guys.